thank you, everybody. It's nice to meet all of you. As we mentioned, this is the practical implementation of construction site BMPs. Let me get the slideshow working here. Come on. Okay, just quick few things about myself and about Verux. Verux is a stormwater company, an environmental consulting firm. We also do construction management. We have offices we have 6 offices that can kind of cover from Bakersfield to Reading. We opened a South Bay office almost a year ago now. My operations manager, Julio Mora, is over here in the corner. So excited about that. Excited about being down here in front of all of you guys and to start working with you guys and make sure you guys know about Verux. We started as a construction management company, but quickly we were already doing stormwater consulting and continued on that and grew that. And that's 98% of what we do now at Verux. So as he mentioned, I'm the co-owner of Verux. I'm a professional civil engineer. Have worked in the construction space, worked for a heavy civil contractor when I finished school. Continued to do that. I was a project engineer, an estimator, project manager, general superintendent for a heavy civil contractor, and then went to work as a consultant managing large mixed-use development projects, and got into the stormwater space from that standpoint. Hung my own shingle in 2010 with my co-owner, Ben Rao, and started writing, became a QSDP and all of that stuff, started writing SWEPs and built that up. And all of our offices are really stormwater consulting businesses. I have all the certs you could want. I'm a trainer of record. I am a QSD. I have my Title 22. I also am a water pollution control manager for Caltrans and very integrated into the Caltrans and what they do because I'm part of their Caltrans industry subcommittee on stormwater. I've been on doing that for like 8 years. Caltrans started requiring an 8-hour water pollution control manager training in 2020. And I train those people. That's the only training I do. I don't train QSPs and Ds, although I could as a trainer of record. But I do Caltrans 8-hour water pollution control manager training. And I've trained 700 people for 8 hours doing that since 2020. So can talk, and I am going to zip through some of these slides in order to get to the stuff. So we'll see how I do today. So Ben Rao, that handsome devil, that's my business partner, has much the same background as I do, has all of the same certifications as I do. One thing I want to talk about today, and that's what has to do with this display we have up front here, we have partnered with Granite Rock Supply in our South Bay office. So we actually our actual physical brick and mortar offices is within the Granite Rock Supply facility in Salinas. This shows where their different locations are and what they do. But Granite Rock Supply, they're construction, hardscape, landscape material suppliers. Okay, that's what they do. And they have really dove into the BMP space with us and are trying to push that through. It's nice to have, when someone comes to us, we consult. We don't install anything at Verux. We consult, we manage writing SWEPs, doing all of that stuff. But it's really nice that when we say we need silt socks on this job and we're suggesting that to a client, that we have someone we can point to. And so Granite Rock Supply actually in their Salinas office has created kind of a BMP sandbox on their facility where these things are installed. They're out there where you can touch and feel them. But that's what we did here, is tried to give you guys a representation of that up front here. And we've got Granite Rock Supply people here, and feel free after you eat, after I finish talking at you, come up, check it out. Chris will be up here from Granite Rock Supply to talk about it. He'll be able to get you cards for salespeople and all of that. So as an example of what this is some of the different BMPs that they are selling: the jute netting, erosion controls, sediment controls, ESA fencing, silt fence, the Filtrex silt socks. So all of those things, FOD mats for construction entrances, gravel bags, all of those things. So they're a great partner for us. We're excited about that. I think it's symbiotic. I think we're both excited to be able to be working together on this stuff, but we are just happen to be renting space from them, but we are working together, but we're not tied to each other beyond that, other than that we, appreciate that we have someone we can refer people to when they need those materials. So, okay, so the agenda today is we're going to talk, and I'm going to run through the first couple of items. There's a fair amount of slides, and I'm going to kind of zip through them. I talk fast, but it's about just to kind of get you a background of why I'm here. SWEP compliance, okay, stormwater pollution prevention plan. That's a SWEP compliance. The why, so where we got, how we got to where we are. 2022 CGP, construction general permit versus the 2009, because we were in a very much in a transition. September 1st was a big cutover. Everything now is on the 2022 CGP. Then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of what I want to talk about, which is a BMP, best management practices, BMPs, the inspector focus and issues, and a little bit of a Q&A at the end. We have some time. So agenda, SWEPT compliance, the why. So the Clean Water Act back in 1972. So federally, this has been a thing. We want our water to be clean. We don't want our rivers to catch on fire, right? So 1972 is when that started going federally. In 1990, the US EPA started regulating construction stormwater of over 5-acre projects, okay? So started worrying about regulating that. California in 1999 started worrying about construction stormwater over 1 acre. So 1 acre and above disturbance, construction stormwater became a thing that needed to be dealt with and permitted. Fines started coming out. Those kind of things started happening. 2009 is when the construction general permit came out, and when it really kind of started a new industry somewhat. We were all developers and people were dealing with stormwater before then. But in 2009, they came up with, you have to have this qualified SWEPT developer certificate, the qualified SWEPT practitioner certificate, to be able to be really involved in that. And so it did create a bit of a new industry at that point. In 2022, they updated the CGP, the 2022 construction general permit came out, and there was a 2-year grandfather, and that came out in 2022. It started being implemented in 2023 September, and they gave a 2-year grandfathering period. So if you were permitted prior to September 1st of 2023, you could stay on that permit, did not have to go to the new permit until September 1st of this year, just a couple weeks ago. And now the grandfather period's over. Any job that was permitted under 2009 cannot be anymore. They were administratively terminated. They were administratively removed and are gone now. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Cost, another part of the why, costs and potential fines. Okay, so municipalities can have ordinances to go after people for not following up with this, not dealing with their stormwater issues. Okay, but the state water board and the regional boards throughout the state of California can definitely have a hammer to come after people. Okay, so this is a these are on the public record. Fines happen. I'm going to show you statistics in a minute of how many jobs are permitted and everything else. But here you go. $559,000 fine on a project, a small project in the Truckee area that was done. So there are legitimate and very significant fine potentials if you're not getting it done. You're not permitting properly. You're violating the permit. Okay. Education is a huge part of prevention. That's part of the why, right? That fine that we talked about, I wasn't a part of that fine as a consulting firm, but we got written into the fine at the end to state that, and part of the negotiation in those fines, sometimes the contractor or the discharger negotiates that, hey, we clearly weren't trained properly. That's the reason why we got the fine. So we're going to write in, and Verux was written into this one to say that from this point forward, annually, Verux is going to train all the project managers for that company every year. So they want, education is supposed to be, training is supposed to be what you're doing here today. Stormwater Awareness Week is an amazing way to do that. John Travascus and his group spend an incredible amount of time and do an incredible job of making these free seminars available. So shout out to them and what they've done. So stormwater statistics. So this gives you a look at kind of what happens in the state of California from fiscal year 21-22 to 23-24. Regulated facilities, 60,000 or so. Individual permits adopted, 500, 600. Total inspections, 7,500 or so. Informal enforcement actions between 2,500 and 4,000. Compliance and penalty enforcement actions, we all want to stay out of that statistic, okay, 1,600 to 2,000. And we really want to be out of the statistic of penalties assessed between 10 and $20 million. Okay, so it is legit. It is a very big concern. Finishing off the why portion of this is that compliance is less costly when planned ahead. Protect your client. We are currently right now, from us as a stormwater consultant, it's winterization planning time. It's a year-round permit. You have to comply with this permit year-round. You have to do inspections year-round. Okay, and it's very important. And you can get a fine in the middle of July, absolutely. But when does it get really critical? Right now. We are trying to finish projects. We're in the middle of projects, and we're heading into October, and the rain's coming, right? winter is coming. Okay, so we have to be prepared. Right now, we as a consulting firm are out there meeting with our clients, starting to do winterization planning, trying to get in people's heads that we are closer to what's going to happen when Mother Nature comes and starts beating us up. Okay, so planning ahead, making sure you're on top of things. There's a picture on the left of an active treatment system. We've had active treatment systems live on our projects every year for probably about 8 years to go through the winter. These active treatment systems are expensive to install, expensive to run, expensive to the materials for them are expensive, the rental is expensive, and the removal is expensive. You guys but they work. They work and they have very clean water leaving the site. They're exponentially more expensive if you call them on Christmas Eve and say, I'm going to jail if I don't have it in place by New Year's Eve, right? So this is the kind of thing where we're trying to plan ahead now during the winterization phase, figure out whether we need this kind of a thing and getting it installed. We can bid it now to the different ATS companies. The pricing, the ATS companies can incrementally install it and make it so it works. The picture on the right is just an example of that middle of summer. It is a year-round permit, guys. And if you're a municipal inspector or if you're looking at this kind of stuff and you're going out there, don't let this happen. Solid waste is a no-no on projects. Letting a solid waste pile turn into something that looks like that is a major no-no. And it doesn't matter that it's July and it's not going to rain. You still need to be dealing with that. Don't let this little pile of garbage turn into something almost as big as the Connex box, okay? Be on top of it. Plan ahead. Protect your client. So 2022 versus 2009 CGP. I'm just going to hit some of the hot buttons here before we get into the BMPs. So as I mentioned, as of September 1st, 2025, all 2009 construction general permitted projects were administratively terminated. So it just happened, okay? It just happened. In order to continue a project that had a 2009 CGP, you had to go pull a new WDID number, get a new permit with a new SWEP that complies with the 2022 construction general permit. If you have a project that either could not get their and if you pull your new WDID number, your new permit number with the new SWEP that's compliant SWEP to 2022, then you could terminate the old one saying, we've already got this covered under a new permit, we could terminate it. It was such a last minute thing. People were kind of trying to throw things together. Obviously, we started working on this months ago, but there were some clients that just, we think we're going to be done. And then they realized they weren't. And so it came down to the last minute. And if you weren't able to get your 2009 permit officially terminated, it got administratively terminated. And the hate mails have started coming out saying you are a non-filer, you are in violation, you did not do what you were supposed to do, which was to replace the original permit with the new permit. And so if you're in that boat, some jobs, the job was long done. They just had never terminated it. They didn't have a consultant that got them in the right direction, had them going in the right direction. They didn't understand what they were up against. And so they just administratively terminated. They're getting the same hate mail saying, what's going on? What happened? You need to prove what happened and the job was really done. Other jobs, they were actively working, couldn't get it done in time, but they have a new WDID number. If you have done that, you still are getting the hate mail. You need to then go in and document, and they're asking in their letter to document that you did pull a new permit, tie it out to the new permit and the closeout of the old permit. The main thing is if you get one of those letters, you need to document what you did, because you're on a non-filers list. Eventually someone's going to come and see you and they throw out numbers like $1,000 a day, right, for that problem. So make sure you get a hold of an expert, document that you are out of the woods, that you took care of your job. If anybody is working actively on a job and doesn't have a new WDID number after September 1st, you are really working without a net, okay? You are in violation, and that's a problem. So if anybody's in that boat, might want to grab my card and let's talk about it and see what we can do to keep you out of trouble, okay? Part of the 2022 CGP, there are new bid items. Caltrans is coming out in their October standard that's coming out this year with new bid items. So this is anybody who uses Caltrans standards. Caltrans is kind of leader on the bid items for stormwater. They are now, the REAP is gone. There is no such thing as a rain event action plan anymore in the 2022 CGP. There is now a pre-QPE inspection that has to be done by a QSP. So Caltrans is replacing that bid item with a pre-QPE. They also, on risk level 2 and 3 projects, Caltrans had sampling and analysis day. That has been being replaced by during and post-storm inspection. So These are cool things that are coming out that makes it more on a hard bid world, makes it possible for you to bid projects in line with what the 2022 CGP requires. QSD&P responsibilities, big change in the permit. Previous to the 2022, a QSD or P was required to be on the project, okay, but you could delegate to anybody. You could do, as long as you're willing to sign off on their paperwork, you could delegate. Now there are required inspections that have to be done by the full QSD and by the QSP. So a QSD, the person who develops the SWEP, now has to go to the SWEP or the project at the start of construction when replacing a different QSD twice a year and after an NAL exceedance. So that's a big thing that QSDs now have to go. QSPs now have to go physically once per month all year round. They have to do all the pre-qualifying precipitation events. So prior to storm events, they have to do the inspections following an NAL exceedance of stormwater quality and for prior to the NOT. You can delegate responsibilities for other inspections, the weeklies, the durings, the post-storm inspections, but that person now has to be specially trained. It used to be that you could, as the QSP, if I wanted to delegate to someone, I could take them out, train them. As long as I'm willing to sign off on it, it's up to me to make sure you're doing it right. Now, the CASQA, the State Water Board body, has provided guidance on what that delegate needs to know. They have to have foundational training. They have to have site-specific training. And Caltrans takes it another step. You have to do both of those things, and you have to take the 8-hour water pollution control manager training class, or you cannot be a delegate. So there's a lot more documented training that a delegate has to do in order to do training. So that's a big change. Qualifying precipitation events significantly changed, which is to determine what is a rainstorm. It's based on the NOAA forecast, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's forecast. And it is now all based on forecast. It used to just be pre-storms or REAPs were based on forecast. Now, during storm inspections are all based on forecast, not necessarily what actually falls out of the sky. It's what the weatherman says, what NOAA says is what all inspections are based on now. So it's a pretty big change. And it's no longer based on calendar days. It's based on 24-hour increments, however they work. If you look at the bottom example here, you're looking at percentage chance of precipitation. That's what these 50s, 85s, 90s, 100s are. You look at that, as soon as you break over 50% chance, then you start counting the next 24-hour period of how much accumulation is predicted. And if you have over a ½ inch, that's a storm that requires an inspection, a pre-storm inspection, and a during storm inspection. So it's all based on forecast. There's a forecast here that calls for 1/1600ths of an inch of rain, but because we're not over 50%, it's not happening. So it doesn't count. What counts is when you hit the 50, then you start adding up. And then continuing days of the storm is based on no longer about percentage, it's about accumulation. And if you're after the first day of over a ½ inch, then you just have to have another 2/500ths in the next 24-hour period for the storm to continue. So in this case, we had over 50%, over a half, and that storm event starts at 4 p.m. So you start during storm inspections the next day, and then you're looking at the next 24-hour period, you're over 2/500ths, so the storm continues. Then you look at the next day, again, we're over 2/500ths, the storm continues. And then the next 24-hour period after that, it's less than 2/500ths, the storm ends. So it's all based on forecast now. The only thing you use a rain gauge for is determine whether or not you do a post-storm inspection. It's a little flawed, but that is the case. That's the only thing based on what actually falls out of the sky is post-storm. Durings and pre's are all based on forecast, period. I didn't mention, and I apologize, one of the things I was supposed to mention is if you have questions, please throw them in the chat. We're going to have a chance for some Q&A at the end. Make sure you throw those in the chat. Discharge sampling has changed in that there's no longer averaging. You cannot average your storm sampling anymore. No daily averaging anymore. So that's much more likely that you're going to have an exceedance because there's no averaging. You have some trickle of water leaving your site that you sample and it's outside of the parameters. It's an exceedance and you're going to have to report on it as such. Dewatering is now further defined. I said I was going to hit these things fast, and I am because I want to get to the next part of this presentation. Dewatering is now further defined in this permit where they talk about the notifications required for dewatering from your job sites, the frequency and a type of sampling you need to do in order to dewater from your job site. So all of that is regulated now. You show up on a job site and there's a hose and a trash pump leaving your job site. You need to chase that, find out where it is. because there needs to be notifications and sampling doing a part of that. Okay, you can't just pump water off your job sites without, and you couldn't do that before, but now it's been very formalized in the dewatering. Passive treatment is now possible. I showed you an active treatment system and told you how expensive they were. Passive treatment was kind of thrown in fairly late in the game with the permit. And so passive treatment is now required. It's a little bit, it's coming along. There's been some great presentations during Stormwater Awareness Week of passive treatment. We were actually, Verux was actually highlighted. We have a project, one of the first passive treatment projects that was done in California. Here's a picture of it. And you need to get a passive treatment company involved to do passive treatment because you need to do a passive treatment plan. Caltrans, was thrown in, and Caltrans hasn't had time to study it, so Caltrans does not allow passive treatment to date, and they don't have a pilot program to kind of integrate it. Eventually it will, but right now Caltrans does not allow passive treatment because it's so new, and it hasn't been, they don't feel it's been studied and tested enough. But it's been going on, passive treatment's been going on throughout the United States for a long time. It's not just now part of the permit here in California. Inactive projects, the permit now allows for you to inactivate a project. If you're going to shut down for winter and you can temporarily stabilize the project, you can now go to inactive status and reduce the number of inspections you need to do. So that's positive for this. TMDLs and Russell 2, I'm not going to really touch on this much. There are several Stormwater Awareness Week seminars on Russell 2 and TMDLs. I suggest you get into it, but it does affect, it's integrated into the 2022 CGP. So it does, there are some significant changes there, and people are still wrapping their mind around it. Caltrans is about to issue a new Russell 2 formula for people to use. So, okay, so now BMPs, inspector focus, and issues. So my intent is to talk to you guys about best management practices. We've got examples of best management practices up here. We have different sediment controls. We have some erosion control. We have the track out control stuff up here. Again, after the training, please come up, touch it, grab a koozie from the guys from Granite Rock Supply, talk to them about what they have. They have some information on what their products that they sell. But we're going to show pictures and practical. So I'm going to go through the different types of best management practices and some of the things that I consider to be low-hanging fruit for an inspector, either a state water board, regional board, or a municipal inspector who does this stuff on job sites and looks at BMPs. Things for you to think about. So track out control. So talk about low-hanging fruit or something that a stormwater inspector is going to care about. You've got to enter the job site, right? So that's obvious that it's kind of low-hanging fruit. You need to come in. If there is no track out control, you're already in trouble, right? Because you're supposed to have track out control. If you have disturbed areas, you're supposed to be going across some sort of track out control before you leave the job site, right? To try and keep from tracking dirt onto the pavements. Okay, so that's the intent of this, and it's use it or lose it kind of a thing. You'll see in this picture, people try and avoid these things. Big rocks, they don't want to drive across all that stuff. So that's the reason why the barricade is up there in the right corner. Barricades often aren't enough because people are willing to get out of their car to move a barricade so they can miss the rocks. So sometimes you have to K-rail it off and force people to use it. You have to just, when it comes to track out control, you have to up the ante, okay? If you put a perfect construction entrance in, you put a perfect FOD mat out there, and you're still tracking material out onto the pavement, you gotta start sweeping. If you're still doing that, that's not working, you're gonna add a construction roadway, which is what's shown on the left picture here, to the end of the track out control, you rock it from there. If that's not working, you're gonna go up to and including a wheel wash if you have to. Wheel washes are a little bit extreme and they take additional work and maintenance because you can't let that dirty water you've washed off the tires go back or leave the job site. But you're going to continue to do that and continue to up the ante so that you don't have track out going off of your job site. It's just and this is low-hanging fruit, right? The biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues, two things, that has to be maintained. If you're using it and you're having track out and you're doing a good job, it's going to get silted up. It's doing its job if it's getting mud in the rock, right? You got to turn that mud over. You got to turn those rocks over, allow it they can get silted up where you can't even see the construction entrance anymore. And that's in need of maintenance. So you just have to continue to stay on top of this and stay on top of your track out. Here's a couple of pictures. there's a maintenance, there is a construction entrance on the right there that needs maintenance. One of the biggest things though, one of the real low hanging fruit from a construction track out issue is you got to use them. So you've got a nice entrance, it looks good, and all these tire tracks to the right of the entrance, tracking mud right out onto the street because no one's driving over, right? So that's a notice of violation asking for. You got to be careful about it's pancaking out on the dirt clods or pancaking out on the pavement. Again, silted up construction entrance to the right there. You've got dirt that's making it past the construction entrance. You're going to have to do some hand work and everything else. The sweeper shown in the bottom right corner there is kind of the thing. That's what people use, right? That's what they want to see for the sweepers. Mechanical kick brooms are definitely not in vogue and not something you want. They cause air quality issues. They put dust up in the air. People still have mechanical kick brooms, use them for shoulder backing and when you're paving, kicking rocks off the road and stuff like that. But they're really not intended to be used for dirt because it just causes more dust to go up in the air and everything else. So not a preferred method. These are. Sometimes with the constituents of the soil, you get staining on the road, even though you're sweeping it, you're doing a really good job, the road's stained and it's not, and you're concerned about that going into the weather, right? We have a stained roadway, we've been sweeping it, we've been staying on top of it, but it doesn't look good aesthetically. And you know that when it rains, that's gonna get washed off. So sometimes you do need to wash the roadway in order to get that red clay material or whatever off the road. You can't just go, okay, well, I'm gonna wash the roadway and just let that go into the DI and leave. It takes a process. You need to get your QSD&P involved. You're going to need to sandbag your DIs. You're going to need to have a Vector truck there. You're going to need to capture that water and not let it leave the site. Okay. But sometimes all you can do is actually wash the pavement, but you just don't do it after hours, those kind of things. Okay. Erosion control. I really like to hit this hard because it's really, really important. ESA fencing, environmentally sensitive area fencing. Everybody's seen the orange fencing before, right? That is out there on projects it's meant to keep you out of an area. From a stormwater standpoint, from a clean water leaving your job site standpoint, obviously that's not doing anything to filter water, but most of the time, the vast majority of the time, it's there to keep you out of an environmentally sensitive area, something that has a different permit, the construction general permit potentially. This is a picture of ESA fencing cordoning off an archaeologically sensitive area. The potential for bones or something else out there that we are not allowed to be in on this construction job. You have that, vernal pools, wetlands, those kind of things, right? That's what the ESA fencing is for. It's used for tree fencing to keep you outside of a drip area of a tree. Super critical BMP to keep maintained properly. When it comes to BMPs, they have to be maintained or they're removed. It's there for a reason, and it's a fairly flimsy product. Maybe there's a historic critter trail that goes through there, and at night the critters go through and knock it down. Whatever. There's people that want to walk through that area at night or like the orange fence and want to build something out of it and steal it. If it's down, you need to maintain it and you need to get it back up because what's on the other side of the fence is really critical you stay on. So, and a blade hand whose job is to build a haul road and the fastest way from point A to point B, they come out there, the ESA fencing's gone, and they cut a haul road through the middle of that an archaeologically sensitive area, you're going to jail. It's not a good situation. So ESA fencing is a really critical BMP. It's considered an erosion control. So you want to make sure it's maintained and on top of it. For large disturbed areas, like one of the number one ways that we stabilize large disturbed areas is we shoot it, right? We shoot it with a hydroseed hydromulch with or without seed in order to stabilize that area. Because every raindrop, if you have disturbed soil, just dirt, is a little micro explosion that causes sediment to move and transport and leave, and then you have chocolate milk leaving your site. So standard, one of the main things that happens from erosion control side is shooting areas. So here's some examples. This is a final slope with a 3-step on it with mulch and seed and has longitudinal fiber rolls on it. Here is a slope that's in the process of being finalized. Track walking is a BMP as a part of that. So when you have a slope, you oftentimes they're going to track walk it with something with a track mounted piece of equipment. You're going to track walk it because that is a BMP in and of itself. It slows water down. It's like a tiny fiber roll. The fiber roll is there to slow and keep sheet flow. So if you have water flowing down that, if you don't have that fiber roll there, to keep that sheet flow and keep that water spread out, what it tends to do is it wants to try and find a low spot and create volume and velocity and then cause erosion. So tracking also does the same thing. It creates little bumps that the water has to slowly go over going down the slope. So if you see someone track walking, they need to be track walking up and down. If they're track walking sideways, that's a problem. Now those little bumps are going sideways and it's creating the ability to erode. And it happens still. So track walking up and down, then that slope gets shot. Erosion control. Blankets are an erosion control product. We have blankets up here. So blankets are erosion control product, oftentimes put over the top of hydro seed in order to help protect the seeds that's there, or in an area where you're going to have volume and velocity of flow. Because if you just shoot it with hydro seed and you have volume and velocity of flow like in a ditch, it's going to wash the hydro seed away. So helps to protect that seed. Plastic's a little, I mean, it's not controversial, but plastic is something that you want to try and minimize. But in the winterization planning mode, which is where we are right now, plastic is important, can be used to try a smaller area. This is a pretty large area to have plastic on it. Plastic has to be maintained. You want to make sure that it's adhered to the ground so it's not going to blow into the traffic lane and cause issues. Just wanted to show you guys a couple of pictures of erosion control hydro seed after it's put on. This is a 3,000 pounds per acre and a 4,000 pounds per acre. Just show you that if someone goes out there and hydro seeds, even if it's less, even if it's 2,000 or 1,500, you shouldn't see dirt through it right after it's done. It should be put on thick, and you shouldn't see dirt through it if it's done properly. Sediment control, make sure that any BMPs are maintained or removed. But sediment control BMPs, silt fence, fiber rolls on slopes, rock bag check dams. In the upper right is an abutment slope. It has a V ditch that runs down the middle of it. So when you're doing this stuff and you're looking at a job site, just shooting it is not always enough. In the areas where you're going to have, again, velocity and volume, which is that V ditch, it's all shot. Then they put a fabric down, and then they put rock bag check dams in it. You want to slow that water down. If you have velocity and volume, you have the potential for erosion. DI protection, drainage inlet protection is important on your job sites, obviously. That's where the water's going before it leaves your job site oftentimes. So you want drainage inlet protection. And again, I keep the maintained or removed item up there. You need to maintain, and DI protection is one of those ones that takes a significant amount of maintenance. It can get run over. You get leaves and other things in it. This example on the upper left, those are two DIs that are hanging in midair. No water except for what falls out of the sky is going to fall in there, but it's still protected. And that's smart to protect it because you're in the rock phase of that construction zone. And if someone drives through there with a blade and kicks up a windrow, that rock can go, or dirt can go in that DI. So it's there to keep rock or dirt from going in that DI. So later when it's connected and it's paved, that first flush of rain, you're not pushing all that dirt downstream. Okay. Maintained or removed. I really love the Filtrex silt socks. They look like fiber rolls, but they have compost in them. So we really like these as a tool in our toolbox because they actually filter. The picture of the DI at the bottom middle with the 3 rows of Filtrex, if those were fiber roll, that would be garbage in, garbage out. Fiber roll is not really meant to filter, okay? It's meant to be a dam, slow water down. But if you had dirty water on one side of those 3 fiber rolls, it's still going to be dirty in there. Compost socks actually filter. So that using them in series like that is not a bad usage of a compost sock. And so we have examples of the compost socks up here. So instead of rice straw inside of them, it has compost, which actually can clean up materials. So, and the beauty of those, we like to keep them as a tool in our toolbox because when it comes to the winter, you may have a job that looks perfect prior to the first rain event. You have your sediment controls in place, your erosion controls in place, everything's looking good exactly per your plan. And then Mother Nature drops 4 inches of rain on you in 48 hours and finds a weak point and blows out some BMPs. And in the middle of that rain event, oftentimes the only thing that can really fix that problem is to go in there and find a window in the weather after that rain event and get equipment in there. Well, in the middle of that rain event, you try and get a skip loader out there, you're going to make it 10 times worse. You're going to get stuck. You're going to make a muddy mess. These can be manhandled out there. These can be carried out and put in place to try and deal with it during a rain event and can help the process. And it may be something you use after the rain event too in an area that's a weak point that you didn't realize you had. Non-stormwater control BMPs. So non-stormwater control, we got paving spread here, should be parked on plastic. Your staging areas should always be called out. Staging areas are really big, are definitely a low-hanging fruit for a water board inspector. We're going to go to your staging yards. That's where you're going to have hazardous materials that are going to be sitting there. You need to make sure those are properly maintained. Your staging areas need to be called out on your SWEP or water pollution control program. More waste management material control BMPs. We have our staging yard area where we have hazardous materials. It has a cover. It has secondary containment. Stockpiles. Stockpiles must be covered and bermed unless they are clean rock. If you have clean rock, you don't have to. Clean rock means like clean crushed rock, riprap rock, the stuff that you would put into a construction entrance. It's not AB. AB has fines. So AB does not get you off the hook. You have to cover AB piles. Soil piles obviously have to be covered. Solid waste is low-hanging fruit. I mentioned solid waste at the beginning of the presentation. Solid waste, you can't have solid waste in the ground. It needs to go into a dumpster. The dumpster needs to be coverable immediately adjacent to it. You got to pick up your solid waste. Just examples of good and not so good. There's a big roll-off bin here with plastic covering it. Great. They can't leak and they need to be covered. Then you just have the typical construction site. Random cardboard, water bottles, that needs to be cleaned up. The attempt to have a garbage can, this is what can happen and you need to stay on top of it, right? That garbage can, no matter how small the garbage can is, needs to have a lid adjacent to it. There's no lid there. Obviously, it's overflowing. You just can't have it. That's a problem, and you need to take care of it as soon as you can. The analogy I have is that the whole clean wood waste situation where sometimes people are like, oh, that's a pile of clean wood waste. Like, why does that have to go in the dumpster? It's clean wood waste. And the reason is because if it sits there more than a week, if you come back, there's going to be a Taco Bell wrapper. There's going to be a used antifreeze bottle. Garbage that's on the ground ends up getting bigger. And it turns into that pile that I showed you at the beginning. That's just what happens. So that's what you can't have it. And you're going to find those things like that. So waste management material control BMPs. So concrete washouts, definitely a low-hanging fruit for a water board inspector. They're going to go to where your concrete washouts are and they're going to walk around and take a look at it. They have to work. They can't be overfilled. They can't be spilling over the edge. You need to just go over there and get a shovel and make sure it hits it. If they're full, cover them and get another one. Okay. Concrete washouts are important. Blue rooms, portable toilets. Portable toilets, couple of hot button issues, but obviously you need to be concerned about them. Blue rooms need to be 50 feet away from a drainage inlet, from a drainage course. The contractor is going to want to put it where it's most convenient for them. But if it's sitting on top of a DI, it needs to move. Okay. It can't be 50 feet. It needs to be 50 feet away. They need to be strapped. They need to be secured. They need to not fall over. If they're on level ground, they should be fine. They should have secondary containment. So secondary containment, you're going to get hit for that if they don't have the trays. If they're on a slope, you need to lash them down so they don't fall over. But the main thing is that if something does bad happen and they fall over, they got to be 50 feet away from a drainage course or a DI so that it's not going off site. Okay, winterization planning. So talking through the winterization planning here. So early winter equals major risk, and that's something. So that's where we are. We're kind of early winter right now. We're about to be. That's why we're out going hard, trying to talk to our contractors, talk to them about what's coming. Okay, and trying to reduce. Right now is the time to try and prepare and give yourself a defensible position prior to rain. Okay, you need to get in that mode as fast as you can. So that is reduce. You've got staging, you've got material staged all over the entire job because it's considered summer. You need to talk to the contractor. The contractor needs to understand what materials do you need this winter? You need to get them on a paved surface or a rock surface that you can access from a paved surface. If they're out in the middle of a field, in the middle of the mud, once it rains, you're not going to be able to get to it anymore. So reducing your disturbed area, understanding where they are critical path schedule wise, what they have to work on this winter, and whether or not they can reduce the disturbed areas in the outskirts and only be focused on stuff that they could defend prior to winter. This is a project that was out there. They'd already started shooting it, but they hadn't shot all of it. And this is what the water looked like leaving. It wasn't leaving the job. Part of the winterization plan is they had this big basin. They had it blocked. Okay. But obviously dirty water going into those DIs on the right, dirty water going in this basin, and they weren't all the way ready for the winter. So major risk. If this was connected, major problem. And if it continued to rain for 15 days and it started to overtop, major problem. We got to look at treating this water to get rid of it. This is what the job site looked like about less than a month later. They finished shooting everything. They installed erosion control blankets, and this is that same pond. Okay. Now we're going to let it, if it gets to a point, we've built up the outfall where the water would build up and then go out, but you can see how clean that water is. This is the thing, the whole early winter piece. I forgot to hit this. We just need 2 more weeks. Sorry, I wanted to talk about that. Every contractor right now that we're talking to with those winterization plannings, they're telling me we just need 2 more weeks. If we get 2 more weeks, we'll finish the grading. If we get 2 more weeks, we're going to get the rock down. If we get 2 more weeks, we're going to get the concrete in. If we get 2 more weeks, we're going to get the paving done. And if Mother Nature gives them the 2 weeks, guess what they're going to say to me then? We just need 2 more weeks. And they get past the next one, we just need 2 more weeks. It's just what happens, but you have to be able to push through that as a stormwater inspector and say, fine, but you've got to have a defensible position if it rains within those 2 weeks. Okay, so I get it. You want to work while the sun's shining, but that's an issue. So this is the way the job looked a few weeks later after it rained several times. Again, early winter equals major risk. This was a small project, and this is the thing too. Guess whose phone rings off the hook when we have that first rainstorm? The erosion control companies, the hydroseed companies. They're getting crushed. You need to be on their dance card. You need to be doing stuff before it rains, because now all of a sudden we got a 5-day forecast and here's a rainstorm, and you try and get someone to answer the phone to come shoot your job. Okay, if you haven't already been working with them. This was a small subdivision company, a small developer. They didn't have those connections because they've got one job and couldn't get anyone to come. They went out and did their best, but this is what the water looked like during the first rain event. After the rain event, they were able to get it together. They were able to shoot the site, and this is what it looked like on the right. They wanted to go to inactive status. They wanted to shut the job down for the winter. The regional board rightly said, well, we want to see how this job is going to perform through a rain event. And you have to be, one of the things I wanted to talk about is adjustments after initial storm. So after initial storm, after it was finally shot, this is kind of what it looked like. They still had some weak points, okay? And so they had to go do more after those initial storms. The developer would have loved to have said, we've spent the money on the right picture. We don't want to spend more money, but you have to be prepared that after Mother Nature gets a piece of you, you may have to do more work. It doesn't mean you're just done, okay? So they had to go out and spend more money to do that. More pictures of adjustments after initial storms. You got your BMPs in place. We have a big development project. Everything's shot. We got grass growing on this job. We have silt fence. We have fiber roll. But Mother Nature comes at you. The soil constituents that really likes this soil really likes to stay in suspension. And we had dirty water leaving the site. In between storm events, and they were kind of back to back to back. We're out there placing the stuff in the right picture. We're adding fabric. We're adding silt socks. I told you I love those as a tool in the toolbox. We're adding silt socks to clean that water up. And after about the third rain event, we got to a point where we were no longer having any dirty water leave the site. The other thing I want you guys to be prepared for with the adjustments after initial storms, this is a final slope on the right. This is a final product. That contractor is substantially complete. They've put the fabric out. They put the longitudinal fiber rolls. They've got the ditch ready to go. It's final, complete construction, erosion and sediment controls on the right-hand side. Well, before it has a chance to have seeds grow and that kind of thing, you get hammered with a bunch of rain. You can have that erosion control wash away, and you have to be prepared to go out and redo things potentially. And as municipalities, you may be paying to redo things if you get unlucky with how the job ends up. So you got to be prepared for adjustments after initial storms. Here's a couple of what not to do's. So we have a project. The job had been stabilized pretty well, but there was a bunch of water that had its erosion and sediment controls in place, covered stockpiles and everything else. We showed up for a during storm inspection, and there was water that was ponded. There was potential for that water was going to end up flooding out into the street. So safety does trump stormwater somewhat. Like, you can't have that happen. You can't have people in a position where they're going to hurt themselves on the traveled way. But there was a laborer who must have come in the middle of the night or whatever and went out there and dug a trench. They dug a trench off-site and let it go. Okay. Now, If that's in order to keep the traveling public safe, I get it. But then we shouldn't show up and there should be 5 laborers here placing silt socks, placing fabric, doing things to protect. You don't just walk away, go, I fixed the problem, right? This is an automatic problem, right? You can't just dig a trench and let her go towards the creek at the bottom of the hill. This is a track out problem, would you say? I mean, so this is the thing. We show up, they have tracked out for a half mile out of this project site, and there are DIs all along the way. Can't have it. There's nobody sweeping, nothing else happening out there. Automatic NOV, notice of violation. Don't do that. Construction in your staging yards and your concrete washouts, that is a concrete washout. Doesn't really look like a very good one. They got all kinds of stuff that they've kind of thrown near it. It's blown out. It's not working. Automatic NOV. Not good. I already showed you this picture because this is, again, we started with a tiny pile of construction waste and it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Can't have it. Can't have it. Speaking of corrective actions, just to make sure you guys understand, a corrective action once called out must be started within 72 hours. That's the requirement of the CGP. You have to start the corrective action within 72 hours. But you also have to finish it before a storm event, okay? So concrete ready mix, washouts, we've got an issue. One of them blew out. There should be someone there shoveling that, getting rid of the full one, shoveling it into the others, okay? But there's a storm event coming. It has to be done before the storm event. Again, picture of a DI protection. Everything's pushed off. And this is what happens. People park next to it. They knock the bags out of the way, leaves and everything else in the way. Must start within 72 hours. Must finish before the storm event. This happens, unfortunately, a lot. We got silt fence. It's obviously not installed properly. If you can see under it, it's not in properly, okay? So we got to fix it, got to get it done. Last slide before we get into some questions, which we'll have a couple minutes for, is just, this is kind of an example of a during storm, make an effort, but don't make it worse. So in the middle of this, so this is a final stabilized slope. This is a substantially complete slope. They've got right-of-way fence in. They've got it landscaped. They've got their blanket in, all of that. Clearly, maybe it's not a design problem. It looks like it is. There's a scupper coming off of that, and it's clearly causing the Grand Canyon to about start happening, right? So, but in the middle of a rain event, what are you going to do here? You can't get in there. They're going to have to go back and rebuild that slope at some point. They're going to have to tear that fence out. There's a lot of work to be done, but don't just ignore it either. Do something, add some temporary drainage, tie it into a pipe so it misses the slope. You can do things during a rain event. Mostly has to be done with manpower during a rain event. You got to find those windows, but you could, down at the bottom of this slope, get some silt socks, try and put some fabric on there that you can do by hand to try and hold it together as best you can and show that you're making an effort in the middle of that storm event. That's my suggestion. But certainly one of the things that happened on this is because there was an argument about whose responsibility it was. It sat like this for quite a while, even between storm events, that you got to be making an effort. Whoever's problem it is, you got to make an effort between storm events so this doesn't continue to get worse as you go through the winter. So that's gets us down, so timing wise, about right here. So I wanted to kind of throw all of that at you. I know I talked fast and hit a bunch of items here, but wanted to give you guys a chance to see some BMPs, some corrective actions, some things that come up. So do we have any chat questions that we want to go through? Rebecca, can you see them? Are you still on?
Yes, there's a bunch of chat questions. Do you have the chat up or do you want me to just field them to you?
Let me see.
They're in the answered section.
Thank you for joining us. Go ahead. Yeah, hit me some.
Okay.
I take a rain gauge reading every day and add them up for the post-storm inspection.
So that's one of the things I consider the rain event. One of the flaws in the construction in the general permit right now is this whole post-storm concept. Because when you look at the rain event, you should be looking at your rain gauge reading every day. The issue is that how do you know that once you get to a half inch for an individual storm event, you're supposed to do a post-storm? But how do you know that half inch happened actually during what was forecast as the QPE? That's the biggest issue. So if you get to over a half inch, you should be doing a post storm. That is kind of what it is. So yes, you should be reading your rain gauge every day, but the rain storm might have actually happened 3 days before you're out there for your during storm, because it wasn't justified to during storm until you get a half inch in 24 hours. So it might have been going a tenth of an inch, 1500s, 2500s, and then all of a sudden you get your half inch in 24 hours. You haven't been to the job site since. Is the rain gauge right? I don't know. So, but you should be checking it.
Another question. Those storms to inspect are based on start time when it exceeds a quarter or half an inch?
So you look for the 50% chance. I can run to that slide really quickly here. But if it's when you hit a 50% chance for the first window, and then you start adding the next 24-hour window. And if you have to get over a half. So 50% chance over a half inch in 24 hours from the first time you see a 50% or greater. That's how it works.
On the forecast.
Yeah, and it's all forecast based, and CASQA has put together a really nice guidance that explains, it gives you multiple examples of multiple storm events with a 24-hour break. So that was what the slide came from for me. So you go on the CASQA website, or if you just Google CASQA storm event guidance or 2022 CGP storm event guidance, you'll be able to find it. And so it's a 4 or 5 page, 6 page PDF that gives you some pretty good insight.
Another one that was kind of partially answered, but what if you are dewatering into a basin on site? Must it be reported if it doesn't leave the site?
No, it does not need to be reported if it doesn't leave the site.
As a QSP, how can I convince a site to have proper track out if there isn't much enforcement from the water?
Okay, so I mean, that's the dance as a QSP or D. The dance is that you're working for, oftentimes you're working for, we work 90% of the time, we work directly for the contractor. So we are there. The contractor's job is to get the job done, right? And get it done as fast and economically as possible for them. I have this conversation a lot. I mentioned it several times. You go and the ESA fence is gone and you cut a haul road through the archaeologically sensitive area and you go to jail. I like to use the terminology, you go to jail. $1 million fine could feel worse, right? So that's really what you're talking about, more fines and those kind of things. But our job, my job, and I have these conversations, is that my job is to keep you from going to jail. I can't tell you the water board's going to come. I'm not going to planning on turning you into the water board, but the water board could come randomly. They know everybody who's permitted. This time of year, they're out doing inspections. Municipalities have their own ordinances and can do it. And you just have to, it's a dance. If I'm continuing to tell someone that they have to do these things, then I am going to up the ante. If they're not doing the corrective actions that I'm calling out, I don't want to be affiliated with a job week in and week out with the same corrective action on it. And I'm going to, what happens is my technician, Julio's technician is going to get Julio involved as an operations manager. Julio's going to try it. He's going to up the ante. Then he's going to call me. And then they're going to get a call from the boss at some point. And then I have to make a business decision about whether I'm going to fire a client, which I haven't really had to do, but it's possible that you have to do it eventually, because you have to, my name's on it, the QSD, my certificate's on it. You got to decide. Hopefully, everybody, this has been around long enough. They've heard it enough. I would love it if there was more enforcement, but I can't force that to happen. So it would make my job easier. Less of those talks about, I don't want you to go to jail.
Next one is, why are we asked to have the contractor remove DI grate protections before a rain event, even if they're maintained?
So you're talking about sometimes, well, that may be a municipality thing where they're concerned about DI grate protections because they're concerned about flooding into the road. So that's not a typical, I mean, I wouldn't say that's a typical thing that you're asked to pull that DI protection. But it is possible, or sometimes you'll show up during a rain event and you'll see the DI protection's been pulled. That's because a municipal inspector has gone by there because the road's flooding. So safety does trump. So, and that's the last bastion. The DI protection's the last thing. And if you got chocolate milk going to a DI, that DI protection is not turning it into less than 250 NTU. So you got bigger problems upstream anyway. So yeah, it happens. But I'm not, I mean, in our jobs, I don't know of where they're saying you got to pull it before the rain event. That's not typical. I would not say that's typical.
What are your thoughts on protecting manhole covers so liquids don't go down around coverage?
Well, manhole covers typically are not in a low point, so I don't see the need for that, frankly. So they're typically not a low point. It's not considered, if it's a manhole cover that's slotted, so it's both, it's a manhole cover and it's a drain inlet, then yes. But manhole covers aren't drain inlets by and large. So, and they're not typically put at high points. It would only be like a sheet flow going across it. So, and they're not watertight, even if you put plastic underneath the rim. So I'm not sure that there's any benefit to that at all.
Right. Does the CGP say stockpiles have to be covered or prevented from eroding?
I don't, the actual, and I don't have it. I should have it memorized. I should have all 385 pages memorized. I don't have that directly memorized. The issue is if you can, stockpiles are supposed to be covered. They're supposed to be covered and burned when they become inactive. This is anything other than clean rock. But if you can prove that the stockpile is in an area that is not going to discharge from the site, it's going to a giant basin or something like that. That's just like when if we have a project site that has an ATS because all the water is treated on the site, then you don't have to have erosion and sediment controls on that site because it still helps to have erosion controls because then it means less flocculant you have to use and stuff like that. But if you can prove the water is going to stay on site, or if you're treating all the water, then you cannot have BMPs. But you better have that well documented in your SWEP. We're not doing all these BMPs because we're treating the water and we can get it done. So.
One that I partially answered, but people were asking both about the yellow FODs track out pads and the sill socks. Maybe expand on why you like them.
Well, I love the FOD mats because they're portable and maintainable, and it's easy. And they're in a big sheet that you put out there, and then they're very portable and movable, and you can just go flip them over, and then they're clean and put them back. So they're really beneficial from that standpoint. They're very durable. You can put them on pavement or near pavement areas. The issue, construction entrances work. Construction entrances work take a tremendous amount of maintenance. And that can be like pulling teeth. They get a little bit silted up. You put it on your corrective action. You need to maintain the construction entrance. These are easier to maintain, and I just like their portability too. The other thing that happens on construction sites are dynamic. So you put in this beautiful construction entrance right here, and it works for this 3-week stage of construction. Now all the guys want to enter right here, and to get the contractor to go and build a new one right here might be a week or two later after I've been putting on their corrective action saying you're driving into the job site without a construction entrance. This way, you just pick it up and move it. Now we're doing it here. It's just much more portable in that way. Silt socks, you should watch. John Travascus has a very cool video that I utilize that talks about the chemical constituents and the difference of using a fiber roll and a silt fence. It's a great video, very much worth. It's 5 minutes, and where they actually went out in their yard and put a fiber roll around a DI, and then they put a silt sock around a DI and measured turbidity, and you'll see the differences and what I was talking about, how one filters and one does not. So very useful video. Shout out to John. It's a very good example. Filtrix has a promo video showing how to install them too, and how you can do it fast and everything else. But there's a couple of videos out there that are really useful to explain that.
We do have a question in the room.
Oh, right. Yes. So the question for everybody on the Zoom is that on active stockpiles, whether they need to be covered. Is that correct? So the issue with active versus inactive, remember, active versus inactive goes out the window if it's going to rain. Okay. People like to use the active versus inactive thing, and they confuse it, and now it's going to rain. They're like, well, we're active. We don't want to stabilize. Rain events to make the active versus inactive go out the window. The stockpile's there and it's the summer months, and if you know, and when you know it's going to go inactive for more than 14 days, then you'd only have to cover it if you got wind erosion control issues, if you've got dust control issues. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to cover it because it's active. And it's pretty easy to keep a stockpile active in July. But you got it, you go over there with it. If you're doing anything with it, it's active. But technically speaking, when you know that a pile or a disturbed area is going to go inactive for more than 14 days, you're supposed to start working on stabilizing. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Last one here from the chat. For setting for setting a SWPPP as inactive, should we expect that the water board will require an erosion control BMP on every area of disturbed soil, perimeter controls, DI protections, and slope protections?
Yes. So my answer would be yes on that. So now the 2022 CGP has the ability to go inactive. It was never defined in the 2009. Now it's defined. And you have to do a change of information on smarts, which means you have to get approval from your regional board to go to inactive status. So you have to upload pictures showing that your temporary BMPs are in place, that you don't have disturbed soil areas, that your erosion and sediment controls are in place. So my answer is that if you show a big disturbed area in those photos, it's like an NOT exhibit. You showed a big disturbed area in those photos and you ask for inactive, it's going to get rejected. The COI will get rejected. So you have to do a change of information, which is a formal document that goes on smarts that says we're in an active status. Here are the pictures of our job showing everything is in place and everything's good. And then you get approval, and then you can go to inactive status, which then allows you to reduce the amount of inspections you have to do. And then you have to do a new COI when you go back to work to say, hey, we're back to work. So that the water board's clear, job's shut down, job's back on. Right on. So anyway, so I appreciate all of you guys that were on the chat. Obviously, thank you very much. Please watch Stormwater Awareness Week videos. Please reach out to me through our website or whatever. For all of you guys here, thank you very much.